Do you have a passion for a career that you knew or absolutely had to fill? Did you know beyond a shadow of a doubt what you were intended to become? Our next speaker did not. He was clueless, adrift, and absolutely void of direction, until he accidentally became a federal civil servant. Please help me welcome Tim Mullins, DTM, giving his speech titled, My Accidental Life of Federal Service. Tim Mullins.
When our daughter was 14 years old, she came to her mother and me and told us that she knew without a shadow of a doubt what she wanted to be when she grew up. She wanted to have a career in the United States Air Force. Her mother and I patted her on the shoulder, said, "That's nice, dear." Then we went away and kind of chuckled to ourselves when we got by ourselves in the bedroom and thought, who knows when they're 14 what they really want to do? I didn't. We speculated. Maybe she had been switched at birth, because her mom and I were clueless when we were 14 what we wanted to do. On May 14th of this year, our daughter will celebrate her 16th anniversary of being in the United States Air Force. She has spent tours in Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and Afghanistan. She just recently took her Master Sergeant's test, and she's looking to go for 30 years. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and anybody who's ever had an overachieving child. That was not me. Today, I intend to try and focus on three topics, or three subjects in this topic. How I accidentally became a federal civil servant, because I was never that focused. What I did during my civil service career, and third, would it now be worthwhile for somebody to pursue a career in civil service? I graduated from high school when I was 17, and I had two things that I wanted to accomplish. I wanted to party, and I wanted to never, ever go to school again. That was it. That was my goal. Well, I accomplished that second goal. No, excuse me. I accomplished both of those goals throughout that summer and into the fall and into the winter. And the reason I never ever wanted to go to school was because I was always the smallest and the youngest person in my class. And I was always just barely grasping this subject when they're already moving on. So I always was trying to catch up and never quite got there. In December of 1968, a couple of my really good friends told me, we've joined the Navy. And I thought, hey, join the Navy and see the world. It's a party crowd, isn't it? So I immediately went down to the local recruiter and signed on the dotted line. Well, a group of us recruits flew from Oakland International Airport into San Diego on February 4th, 1969, a date that shall live in infamy. We deplaned, kind of looking around, not knowing what we were really supposed to be doing. And about that time, the biggest, ugliest, meanest looking first class that you would ever not want to meet came up to us and said, "All right, you maggots, your heart may belong to Mama, but your assets belong to me." It was at that moment that I knew that I had made a big mistake. You want to know what boot camp was like? It was like school. There was mental, physical, and actual tests, like school. I hated boot camp. I would like to say that I graduated from boot camp with honors, but that didn't happen. The Navy, in their infinite wisdom, decided that I was perfect for an electronics career. Really? Me? Who knew? I didn't know. It was news to me. So they sent me off to Aviation Electronics Technician School. You want to know what AVA school was like? School! I hated it. From AVA school, they sent me to Point Magoo, which, if you don't know, by the way, is paradise on earth. This is the place to live if you want to live anywhere, right? So I got lucky, and they sent me to Point Magoo. Well, as a brand new, freshly minted aviation electronics technician, I checked into VX4, and they had billets for 17 technicians. I was the 30th technician to check into the squadron. So guess what they had me do? They put me out on the line, gassing, oiling, and pre-flight checking the aircraft. So I became a plane captain. Boy, that was a waste of 6 months in school. A few years later, I'm going to skip forward a little bit. November 24th, 1973. The Navy gave me the only birthday present that I ever got from them. And that was, they told me, guess what? You're getting out of the Navy in 2 weeks. Yes, yes, yes! I got a 55-day cut. They told me when I got out of the Navy that I had been in the Navy for 3 years, 10 months, and 5 days. But who was counting? I got out of the Navy, I came back to this area, because I was in San Diego at the time, came back to this area and got a job in Oxnard working at a place called Dual Wide, where they made mobile homes, Dual Wide mobile homes. And I was an electrician. And I was kind of happy doing it because it was manual labor and I was pretty good at it. But I wasn't making very much money. But one of the gentlemen that had been working there with me had left for another job. And he came back and he said, "Hey, you guys, gather around, gather around. They are crazy at Point Magoo. They are hiring temporary employees over there because they're trying to eliminate all of the civil servants on the base, and everybody's going from Point Magoo to China Lake, Mojave, El Central, anywhere they can go to where they can have a permanent job and keep their job. And there's not enough people left at Point Magoo to do the work. Go out there, check it out, get a temporary job." And so I thought, join Simple Service and see the world. Why not? So I took the opportunity to go out. And when I got out there, then I heard about something that they call the VRA, which is a Veterans Readjustment Appointment. And they said, instead of a temporary job, would you like to have a permanent job? Yeah, I would. So I signed on the dotted line, took the oath, and I became civil servant. But part of my job description when I first joined civil service was that I had to work 40 hours a week, but I also had to go to school to improve my electronic abilities, you know, my electronic education. Well, the promised promotional path for me was I started as a GS5. In 1 year I was supposed to be a GS6. Then the next year a GS7, and then a GS8, and then a GS9. So within 4 years I was supposed to be a journeyman electronic technician. Well, I got my GS6 after 1 year. And then I got GS6 step 2 after the second year. And then I got GS3 after the third year. You see, the promotions weren't happening. So after a while I thought, you know, I'm gonna just leave this job. I don't like this. But the nice thing about civil service is that if you don't like your job, you can work just about anywhere in the world as long as you're qualified. So I applied for a job as a plane captain at the air terminal. Remember? They made me a plane captain back in the Navy. Well, I got over to the air terminal and I worked there for a few years, and it was a dead-end job, and I knew that. So I applied for a different job and I got that. And then they retired the aircraft that I was working on, and so the federal government, they couldn't just fire me. They couldn't just lay me off. They had to give me a job, but guess what? They didn't have to give me a good job. They didn't have to give me a job I enjoyed. So they shipped me over to this other place, and I hated this job. I mean, paper was flying like you wouldn't believe. I was putting in applications everywhere. Well, I finally applied for and was qualified for and got a job at the electronic prototype modeling shop. It was a dream. I loved that job. It combined the two things that I really liked, working with my hands and electronics. I was building first of a kind, one of a kind electronic boxes. Engineers would think something up, oh, we need this, and then I would build it. I was in that shop that would build it. Oh, I loved that job. About that time, I had made it to an electronic mechanic, wage grade 11. But there was also model makers in that shop. And for those model makers, that was the wage grade 14. Woo! There you were something if you were a model maker. Well, I applied after working there for about 3 years for the model maker position that came open. And there was only 4 wage grade 14s on that whole base as far as electronic prototype modelers. And I got that job. Oh, yes. If there's a hog heaven, I was in it. I had my dream job. I was doing what I really enjoyed. I was making pretty good money. Then, our supervisor left. And I thought, hey, I can do that. So I applied for the supervisor job. And there was 2 of us that were highly qualified. And you guessed it, I didn't get the job. The other guy did. The other guy was what I prefer to call a job hopper. He would go from job to job to job just so that he could get a promotion. And he never stayed anywhere very long. When he got this job, I thought, okay, that's all right. No sweat. I'll just wait for 6 months and he'll be gone, and then I'll apply again and I'll get the job. Sure enough, 6 months later, he was gone. Okay, I'm ready. Bring it on. But what did they do? They decided that instead of advertising that job, that they were going to combine the prototype modeling shop and the instrumentation shop, and their supervisor was going to become our supervisor. All right, I can see the writing on the wall. It's time to make a transition. So the application started going out again. Well, I applied for and got a job in the range department. I was a launch control officer. I was the guy that sat there with my finger over the button in case the missile or the rocket didn't launch, I pushed that button to stop. That's not so hard, I can do that. Well, there was more involved than that, but that was the fun part of the job. But the part I hated about that job was that I had to go out to San Nicolas Island, which is about 60 miles off the coast, every week from 2 to 5 days. Every week. Every week. Hated it! Alright, so I need to look for another job. I just so happened to bump into, not literally, but bump into one of the old engineers that I worked with when I was in the prototype shop. And he was a supervisor over in electronic warfare, and he said, "Hey Steve, have you got any jobs?" And he goes, "Well, yes we do." "Can I have one?" "Well, yes you can." "All right! Oh, happy day!" Well, I left the range, went into electronic warfare as a GS-11. Now, if you recall, back in 1984, I became a wage grade 14, which is equivalent to a GS-11. I went to work at Electronic Prototype Modeling in 1990. I did not get another promotion. I did not have a promotion in the middle of my career for 20 years. Talk about sad sack. But in 2002, I heard about this little organization that helps you improve your communication and leadership skills. I checked them out. I liked what I saw. I joined the club. 2 years after I joined Toastmasters, I got a promotion. Then 3 years later, I got another promotion. And I attribute it all to what I got out of Toastmasters. I finally managed to retire, and this is what one of the things they gave me, after 42 years, to the day, of federal civil service. What about a career today for somebody here? Some people believe that instead of federal service, it should be called forever stationary. Or maybe it should be called festering sore. Or even worse things. Some people believe that if you are absolutely not qualified to do anything else in the world, go work for the government. But I'm here to tell you, in my time in civil service, I met some of the most dedicated, some of the most loyal, and some of the most hard-working people that you would ever want to meet. Sure, there's some deadwood in federal civil service, but I think that can be said about any large company. It's a little harder for the government to get rid of the deadwood, but they can do it. But what are the benefits? If you decided today, Henry, if you today decided,
I retired 26 years ago from federal civil service.
That's right. If any of you decided you wanted to work in civil service, what are the benefits? Well, there's a benefit that there's the opportunity to work about anywhere on the planet. You can work at China Lake. You can work at Mojave. Oh, sorry. This is supposed to be a benefit. You can work at Point Mugu. You can work at Port Wainita. You can work at Hawaii. Working for agencies like the Department of Agriculture, Department of Defense, Department of Education, Department of Justice, Department of Labor, Department of Homeland Security, you would find to be very, very rewarding, because you are not only working, but you are helping people. You're saving lives. The job that I worked in the last 21 years in electronic warfare, I felt that I was helping to save lives. We'll talk about that more later if you want to, but it can be very rewarding. As I've mentioned, you can move from job to job to job. I had 8 different jobs when I worked in civil service. Another thing that I mentioned, it's more difficult for the government to fire you or lay you off. Or they can give you a job that you don't particularly like, but you'd still have a job. Now the negatives. The retirement system is not what it used to be. I retired under what's called CSRS, or Civil Service Retirement System. Pretty good retirement system. In 1983, the government changed to FERS, which is Federal Employees Retirement System. Not, in my opinion, as good. I'm not going to go into all the details, but when has the government ever done anything that makes it an improvement? You would have to put up with minuscule pay raises, or, as in the last 2 years, pay freezes, and they've extended that for a 3rd year. You could get stuck in a thankless job. You'd have to face BRACs, which is a base realignment and closing, or a RIF, a reduction in force. You could get stuck in a job without a promotion for 20 years. So what will it be? Do you have a 14-year-old that is just dying to go into federal service? Is a stalled career something that you are really looking forward to? Are you ready for a thankless job of poverty and service? This all can be yours if you join the federal government. As for me, I'm not that focused.